Alright, what is going on, guys? My name is Leon Master. Welcome back to another Overwatch League news video. Finally, we are getting some news for the next Overwatch League season. The only bit of news we have gotten so far for Season 4 is Paintbrush talking about Dallas Fuel, even some leaks and that. So now we're moving into something. We're almost there where we get a lot of moves. You know, October 13th or 15th is when we're going to see some moves start to happen. We've already seen some coaching changes happening, which is honestly not that huge stuff to talk about. Honestly, just a couple of coaching staff changes, and that's really it. But this one is absolutely huge for the London Spitfire. Something that I think we've expected to see happen these past couple of seasons. It feels like Season 2 it almost kind of happened. Season 3 it basically happened, but not in the way that we're about to see it. And Season 4 is honestly kind of looking bright. I'm not gonna lie, Season 4 is looking bright for the London Spitfire, even though it may not seem that good at the start. Anyways, if you guys did not see earlier on Twitter today, or yesterday when this video is uploaded, the Esports Observer, the first time I've ever seen these people talk about Overwatch League, they tweet out this: the Spitfire are in the process of releasing its entire roster and staff, pivoting to a new strategy to acquire a roster. And I will talk about the article as well, but honestly, if I can see why some people would not want to believe this, but I completely believe it at this point. These guys are pretty official at this point, and we have seen C9 as wanting to get rid of London Spitfire numerous times. They wanted to sell the spot. They wanted to get, you know, an EU roster at some point. Season 1, it was supposed to have players like Sinatra on it, and at this point, I'm not surprised they're going to change their entire roster once again. And like I said, Jack has talked about this, who's the owner of C9, has talked about this numerous times. And we're going to talk about what the article says, but we're going to read the first 3 paragraphs in this so you can sit back, relax, and listen to what I'm about to say here from the article. Overwatch League team, the London Spitfire, is currently in the process of releasing or trading its entire roster and coaching staff from the previous season, according to what the sources close to the organization have told the Esports Observer. Sources say that while some players and staff have already been released, negotiations are still ongoing as it relates to the trading or releasing of others. The Spitfire is owned by C9 and managed by the Guinevere Capital. I think I said that right. Sources also say that the Spitfire is looking towards a new long-term model where the organization will cultivate its own talent from teams such as the British Hurricane, the Academy team. Additionally, the organization is said to be looking toward Western European players who identify with the geographical market as it relates to sponsorship and partnership agreements. This pivot in its roster creation strategy also serves as a long-term plan that looks to save the organization's hundreds of thousands of dollars in salaries, while signing the best free agents on the market in hopes of creating a competition team is a valid strategy. COVID-19 has changed the landscape, and that recouping that money has become much harder as live homestands events have been shut down with no future plans for the league owner Activision Blizzard in sight. If you want to read that 4th paragraph, you can, but I'm not really going to read it. It's talking about Vancouver Titans. So yeah, all the things I talked about, you know, early on in the season with my what ifs, Glister going to a different team, Bernard going to a different team, is looking like it's going to happen now, which like I said, I've expected that to happen. And now, the new London Spitfire team. I was really deciding all day on what I wanted to talk about first. The new London Spitfire, or what the London Spitfire we currently know right now where they're going to. So I decided we're going to talk about what the potential new London Spitfire can look like, and also where these previous London Spitfire players could go. So, like it said, and the obvious one, obviously, is British Hurricane. The article said British Hurricane, and I think it's pretty obvious at this point that British Hurricane is going to be fully promoted. If you guys have not paid attention, British Hurricane is doing better, is statistically doing better than Fusion University, who had a long win streak, and now British Hurricane has officially beat that, winning multiple contenders, you know, months, whatever they want to call them now. They're really different every time I check on it. So they have won non-stop. They have been the best team contenders so far in EU, and probably just in general in all contenders. I don't know about Korea contenders just yet. That always changes as well. But British Hurricane has stayed the same. And if you guys don't know who consists of that roster, it is Hadi, Molf1G, Dand, Sparker, or Spark R, I don't know how to say his name, Reapa, and Kelix. Those are all the players that are currently on British Hurricane. And keep in mind, I'm not really going to talk about the coaching staff as much. We do know the current London Spitfire coaching staff will obviously change, and also the British Hurricane coaching staff will go up there, so I'm not going to talk about the coaches as much. So with the British Hurricane roster, it sounds great and all, but we do run into some roadblocks here, and I've done some brainstorming what could happen here. So if you guys do not know, Spark R, Sparker, I don't know how to say his name, I don't really watch EU contenders as much, I just know that they're going insane. I've seen some clips and public opinions that they're insane right now, but Spark R is actually underage. And he is going to be 18th on June 10th, which honestly, London Spitfire could sign him if they wanted to, and just keep him on the bench till that long, which I think is a valid point for them to do. But another roadblock is they need 7 players. So they're obviously going to have to sign new players, and that means they need a new DPS till June 10th. And I have found that potential new DPS player and I thought of Shockwave. Currently, we do know Shockwave is going to be a free agent after, Vancouver Titans. We talked about Shockwave possibly going to Toronto, which I still think is a valid team for Shockwave to go to. He's worked with Montreal Rebellion, but he's also EU, and London Spitfire now wants to go to an EU route. Finally, we have a full EU team. Paris Eternal was the EU team in Season 2. They're now full Korean, basically. A little bit mix of Soon and Nico and all that. But London Spitfire looking like they're going to a full EU team now, kind of like Paris Season 2, like I've already said. And they do need another hit scan DPS player, because Dan is a fantastic player, by the way, phenomenal player, and he is the flex DPS, so they'll need a hit scan, and the one I wrote down is Shockwave. And honestly, if they're not comfortable with Kellex anymore, and a lot of fans will probably not watch Kellex, play recently. And they did previously have Jofi on the roster, who was arguably one of the best parts of this team and then got released, or there was a situation of Jofi, but he's no longer on the team. They've had Kellex, and Kellex has also been playing a lot as well, I think even when they had Jofi on the team. So Kellex will probably stay. I would not be surprised if Jofi gets signed back. Reaper is on that roster because I did not know Reaper. He played for LA Gladiators in Season 2. Didn't really get that much play time. I think he played like 1 or 2 maps. I remember he played on Horizon one time. And then you have the flex DPS of Dan, who is a phenomenal flex DPS player. Then you have the off-tank Molf1G, who has been popping off in contenders ever since people have really known about him. And then you have the main tank Hadi, which we have known he's probably been one of the better main tanks in all contenders this time. One of the better pickups teams should be looking at. And it looks like London Spitfire is going to promote British Hurricane, which I think is smart. I think they'll be promoting basically a top tier team that is in contenders, bringing them up and seeing how they do in the Overwatch League. And they have some great talent. And like I said, the roster I wrote down is Hadi, Molf1G, Dand, Shockwave, Reaper, Jofi, and Kellex. That's if they sign Jofi back. And they still have Spark R, who is going to be sitting on that roster. So they have, more than 7-man roster. And you know me, if you've been here for a while, I like to put all these in Photoshop. So here it is on your screen. This is what the new potential London Spitfire could look like. I don't have pictures of Hadi and Molf1G, but let's be honest, this team looks nasty. I think this team looks better than the Season 2 team London Spitfire has right now, and then going into this season, I think London Spitfire could be a pretty good team. I think Shockwave would be a huge part if they did get Shockwave, because I feel like, just in general, teams are going to look at Shockwave, but Toronto and London will be looking at him for sure. Dan has been phenomenal. This in general, I don't want to keep repeating myself. This London Spitfire team is going to be nasty. If they do promote everyone and sign the people I've said, I don't really expect Jofi to be signed, but I would not be surprised if that was the case. Now let's talk about the current London Spitfire we know right now, with the 12-man roster going to JMac, Bernard, Cleston, Glister. You know who it is. I'm not going to list all 12 of them for you, but I will go down the list listing teams they go to, or they probably won't go to a team at all. I did make graphics for some players, and they're pretty obvious who they're going to be listed for. I listed one player and it had multiple teams. If one player I listed only has one team, I'm not going to make a whole graphic for that. But in general, some of these players, honestly, the only team they could have been on was London Spitfire, and I don't see them going to other teams. But then again, who knows how they'll do in tryouts if that is the case. So starting off with tanks, then DPS, then supports, we have JMac, and the only team I wrote down for JMac is the Boston Uprising. I don't see JMac really staying in the Overwatch League if he doesn't even go to Boston, but I think at this point we know Boston hopefully changes their entire team for next season, gets rid of fusions. It looks like Mikey is going to be a 2A possibly. We'll see how that goes later in the future, but Mikey is playing for the Academy team. And so if JMac comes into Boston, who is cheap, almost all of London Spitfire this season was cheap, so I would not be surprised if some of these pieces did go to London Spitfire. So JMac is my first list going to Boston, but then again, another thing of Boston Uprising, they never have really signed players who were in the Overwatch League and now on their current team. They've rarely done that. Now on to Bernard, and there's a lot of teams I have listed for Bernard. To start off, I have the Dallas Fuel, the Atlanta Reign, NYXL, Toronto Defiant, and the Hangzhou Spark. Dallas Fuel, obviously, hopefully they're going to a whole revamp. They said they're going to do major changes, and I think, honestly, I love Note and all. I think Note has done a great job this season. I think Bernard could potentially do way better, especially maybe with Gamsu side to side if they keep Gamsu. I think Bernard could potentially be better, and honestly, if we're looking at tier list-wise, I think I have Bernard above Note, but then again, I've not done a tier list in a while, except for my last one. But Bernard, I would say arguably is better than Note, but some people would probably argue differently. Atlanta Reign, I think it's kind of obvious. Hawk was underwhelming this season. We didn't see Fried play at all, unfortunately, because I thought Fried was good in Season 2. And I think if they brought Bernard into the Atlanta Reign, be a massive game changer. But honestly, out of all the teams, I really don't see Atlanta happening. But it's still a team to mention. Then on to NYXL. I think this one is also interesting. We've seen Hoppa was also had an underwhelming season this year with the NYXL. Then they had Bianca, who was sitting on the bench all season, but occasionally played some games at the end of the day for NYXL, and I was very impressed with how Bianca played, and I thought Bianca did great, and I thought they were going to keep starting him, which they did some games, but some games they kept Hoppa in. But if they want to have a fantastic off tank who is probably better than both Hoppa and Bianca, you put Bernard in. If Bernard plays around the players that NYXL has, I think Bernard could be going to the top of rankings with all off tanks players, going to S tier, maybe even like top 3 off tanks, especially if he plays around those people in NYXL. Now in the Hangzhou Spark, another great team I think could be a great fit for Bernard. They had Rhea, who was unfortunately on the bench because of his wrist issues. I still think Rhea could potentially be good. They brought QOQ in, who I kind of was underwhelmed a little bit, not a lot. I just expected more from QOQ. At the end of the day, QOQ was just solid, and I think, once again, Bernard is better than QOQ and Rhea combined, it feels like. So Bernard going to that team, especially with Guzhwei, just imagine how good that tank duo would be. So aggressive. One of the best tank duos we'll see in the league if Guzhwei and Bernard is the tank duo. And then, obviously, the last team that's going to be mentioned by almost everyone this year is going to be the Toronto Defiant. Nevix was probably one of the worst off tanks in the league. I don't know if he was the worst, but we'll see where that goes when I think about it a little bit more. But Nevix was not that good, and obviously, do I really have to say it? Bernard comes in, changes everything. Bernard is miles better than Nevix. It's crazy. Not that much. I just don't want to keep talking about the obvious things when it comes to Toronto. Bernard is just better than Nevix in every single way. I think these teams would be great, but then again, we'll need to see how moves go on later in the offseason, because who knows? Maybe we'll see Bernard hop on Seoul Dynasty or something like that. Then we have Jihoon. Honestly, I didn't write a single team for him. I don't think he will be in the Overwatch League next season. I don't see a team that would want him. Then again, Boston may pull him. It's strange. Boston will probably sign people I did not say anything about. So I didn't write anything about Jihoon. I think the only team he could have been on was London Spitfire. Now the Kleston. I think Kleston's honestly kind of underrated. He's listed as a DPS player on the London Spitfire roster page, but every time I've watched him play, he's played off tank. So I think Kleston all around, great off tank, honestly. If they didn't have Bernard, I think Kleston would still get a lot of shine on the London Spitfire. But since people don't really know him that much, I think Boston could be another good fit, and another great off tank for the Boston team. But then again, Boston has their whole other thing. I'm just mentioning these teams that these Spitfire players could go to. I don't think he will go to Boston, but I love at least mentioning it. Then on to the next one, the obvious one, Glister. I think Glister could potentially go to many teams, and we'll talk about these teams. And the obvious ones I have wrote down is Dallas Fuel, Florida Mayhem, Houston Outlaws, Seoul Dynasty, and the Toronto Defiant. I talked about Glister going to Dallas Fuel already earlier these past couple months, and I think it would be a great move for Dallas to do. They have already had high expectations like Decay on that hits again spot. They need another high expectations player like Glister on that team. We've seen this with LA Gladiators. They had high expectations with Fisher, and they had a hard time finding that high expectation player with Roar, who didn't really live up to Fisher, and it's just kind of unfortunate things came out. So they need another high tier, top tier player like Glister taking that hits game DPS spot. I think Florida Mayhem's another good shout. I think BQB was great, but I think Glister could just be an upgrade personally. But if they didn't sign Glister, I would not be surprised. Houston Outlaws, I've been really trying to find a hit scan upgrade for this team, so maybe Glister could be the next hit scan upgrade. Just imagine a team with Glister, Dante, Meko, Jexay, and then whatever else they want to do with upgrades on those other roles with off-sport, and then obviously main tank. We'll see where that goes. But Glister would be another pretty good fit on the Houston Outlaws, but honestly, out of all the teams, I don't really see this one happening, also with the Toronto Defiant. Seoul Dynasty would just be a dream, honestly. If Glister went to Seoul Dynasty how it was supposed to, honestly, Season 3, because he was on the Academy team, he should have got promoted to play with Profit, and I still think that's a chance. We could still see Profit and a Glister duo happen, and that would be absolutely crazy. Hopefully this one happens. I would love to see a Glister and Profit duo, but we'll see. Toronto Defiant, do I really have to say anything like again of Bernard? I think Glister is honestly better than Logix in some ways. I think Glister could go there, do a great job on double hit scan. If Toronto Defiant can't get Shockwave and London Spitfire gets Shockwave, you get Glister. Glister comes in, plays over Logix. It would be a great upgrade for the Toronto Defiant, I feel like. And especially if they get like a player like Bernard, where they'll have some synergy as well. I'm going to talk about 3 players here, Babel, Shui, and Aldo. I all listed them for Boston Uprising. Nothing much to really talk about here. Babel was great, but he didn't get enough show, and I honestly don't think other teams want Babel. I think they would rather have some more experienced Overwatch League players to play on their team, or players that is currently in contenders. We didn't really see Babel play as much as Glister in general. Shui, he had his moments. I don't think Shui will be in the Overwatch League next season, but if he does, it's most likely going to be Boston. Although I think Aldo's very underrated. He could definitely go to Boston, but we'll see where he goes. I definitely think he will be at least a sub on a team, if not in contenders. Then on to the next one, Sanguinar. I honestly had a hard time trying to find teams for Sanguinar. I feel like just like Babel, I think teams would want experienced Overwatch League players, and the only teams I really wrote down for is both of the LA teams for Sanguinar. I think if they wanted to try something new on LA Valiant, they get Sanguinar in, and then you have Rain as a backup as well. Rain is an aggressive playstyle, Sanguinar is kind of in the middle. Depends on what they want to do. And then on the LA Gladiators, they just need a support duo upgrade. Maybe keep Shaz in and upgrade over Sanguinar over Big Goose, possibly. That's really it I have for Sanguinar, but it's very hard to talk about some of these London Spitfire players, unlike, Bernard and Glister, who have been very well known and off contenders and popped off, unlike some of these other players who are very unknown and completely rookies, like complete rookies. Then you have Fuse. I'm just going to list Boston again, or it could be a sub on a team, and the same thing goes for Hylie and Krillin, sub on a team. I don't think Hylie could go to a different team. I really tried looking for a team for Hylie because he was honestly pretty good this season, but the only team I could see him go on was the current London Spitfire we know right now. But maybe if there was a team, maybe Houston Outlaws for Hylie, but that's going to be hard to see. Out of all the players I listed with Boston or none with teams, I think they'll all be at least a sub on a team for sure, like I listed of Hylie and Krillin. But it's very hard to say. I think for sure the 3 players that will go to a different team is Bernard, Glister, and Sanguinar, for sure. Anyways, guys, that is it with the news today, all London Spitfire. This is a long news video for the London Spitfire, just off of one topic, them releasing their entire roster and what the new roster could be. And may I say, I'm actually kind of excited to see how this goes. I think London Spitfire fans should be excited to see British Hurricane be their new team, if that is the case. And if they get a player like Shockwave, which I'm really confident, my gut is telling me that Shockwave is going to be on London Spitfire, if they are going towards a EU route with British Hurricane, because they do need a hits game player, and that's like asking for Shockwave to come to London Spitfire. So I'm excited to see how this new London Spitfire comes out. If the owner of C9, Jack's happy about it, then I'm happy about it. He has not seemed happy these past 2 years in the Overwatch League, but we'll see where it goes. Anyways, guys, it's going to be for me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to join my Discord down below. Also, don't forget my Twitter and my Twitch, and don't forget to hit that bell, and don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys on the next one.